Hello, happy Sunday to you all. Today we celebrate the great solemnity of Christ, the King of the universe. The solemnity of Christ the King, celebrated today, the last Sunday of the liturgical year. We acknowledge and celebrate that Christ is the King of the universe. The central theme of the gospel is a reflection on how daily living should be influenced by loving service. This is what it means to be king, kingship of loving service, to be a shepherd who is true to his name, a shepherd of goodness and kindness, who leads the lonely and disadvantaged to the fresh and green pastures. Today's gospel insists precisely on the universal kingship of Christ, the judge, with a remarkable parable of the last judgment, which St. Matthew placed immediately before the passion narrative in Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46. The images of this parable are simple. The language is popular, but the message is extremely important. It is a truth about our ultimate destiny and about the criterion by which we will be evaluated. For in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said, "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to see me." If we put love for our neighbor into practice in accordance with the gospel message, we make room for God's dominion, and his kingdom is actualized among us. Jesus leads those who in his own time were the most marginal, those who suffer hunger or thirst, the naked, the stranger, the sick, and those in prison. That original list is certainly not off the mark regarding our own times, especially during this period of global pandemic and various wars among nations. We can think of those who hunger and are without nurture, physical or spiritual, or those who thirst for meaning and hope in the confusion of our world, those who search for love and meaning in the world that is depressed and in despair. We can think of those who are exposed with little cover or protection, those who sleep rough on our streets, also those exposed economically or emotionally. We can think of those who are treated as strangers, the immigrants, the asylum seekers, people of colors, gypsies, and all who do not fit into how we define the categories of the respectable and being like ourselves. We can also think of those who are physically in our prisons, but also those who are trapped in the many prisons of human suffering, depression, oppression, or anguish or distress. These are the ones with whom Christ identifies himself. If we do something for the most marginalized, then we do so because we encounter Christ in them. The gospel is, however, telling us something much more deeper. If we wish to look for symbols of God, if we want to know who God is, then we should not turn to the powerful, but to those who have no outward earthly powers. The poor and the marginalized reveal to us who God is. They are symbols and sacraments of the presence of God. This is more urgent, especially in the time of global pandemic and needless wars. The gospel also tells us that Jesus, the Son of Man, the universal King whom we celebrate today, is the ultimate judge of our lives. For him, to reign is to serve. To reign is to serve. And what he asks of us is to follow him along the way, to serve, to be attentive to the cry of the poor, the weak, and the outcast. We need to learn to be servers. Since Christ was a servant king, we are invited to be his loyal citizens by rendering humble service to others and by sharing Christ's mercy and forgiveness with others. We need to use our authority to support the rule of Jesus. This feast is an invitation to all those who have power or authority in the public or in private realm to use it for Jesus by bearing witness to him in the way we live and serve others. Parents are expected to use their God-given authority to train their children in Christian ideals and in the ways of committed Christian living. We accept Jesus as our King of love when we love others as Jesus already loves us, unconditionally, sacrificially, and with agape love. The solemnity of Christ the King is not just the conclusion of the church year. It is also a summary of our lives as Christians. On this great feast, let us resolve to give Christ the central place in our lives and to obey his commandment of love by sharing our blessings with all his needy children. Let us conclude the church year by asking the Lord to help us serve the King of Kings as he presents himself in those reaching out and crying out to us. And may we have the privilege of grace to hear at the end of the pilgrimage of our lives, "Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world." Amen.